Well, I promised my diehard soap opera fans that still comment, even though I haven't consistently talked about soap operas in 2 years on the channel, that I would talk about Beyond the Gates, which will be premiering in a little over a month, because I do hope that every soap opera fan that was ever a soap opera fan, even if it's been years, will check out Beyond the Gates when it premieres in February. It premieres February 24th, my birthday. So I guess the show's going to be a Pisces, which I think is a good sign. I think it will be very dramatic. Um, but yeah, I really am hoping for the best. I am excited because we haven't had a network debut a soap opera since 1999, and that was the abomination that was Passions. MTV actually did premiere a soap opera in 2001 called Spider Games. But outside of that, a new soap opera hasn't premiered in America in 25 years or more. So it is a big deal. And I wanted to break down my thoughts. They posted a behind the scenes preview on a CBS morning news show on Sunday morning, giving us a little insight to the behind the scenes. And it has shown me that a lot of my biggest critiques back when I used to talk about the soap operas every week on this channel, that they've made some of the changes I used to complain about. The obvious one is the diversity. This is a black soap opera with mostly black prominent families, the main characters. Yes, there will be some white characters too, and yes, the show will need to have somewhat of a white audience if I think it's going to be able to stick around in the ratings. Although before recording this video, I hadn't checked soap opera ratings in a long time because I don't watch any of the network soap operas. I only check out Days of Our Lives, which is now on Peacock, and I couldn't even find total viewership for ratings, only the demo. So maybe Beyond the Gates doesn't have to be that impressive to stick around for a while. It just has to have a decent demo. A couple of the commenters talked about some of the behind the scenes people. Before I get to those, let's talk about the positives. Michelle Valjean will be the head writer and one of the producers, and it's her creation as a writer for this show. I do have faith in her. She started in Generations, which was a short-lived soap opera, the first soap opera to try and come on with a more prominent black family and not just a bunch of white families. So she has experience in soap operas for over 3 decades. She was on General Hospital for a long time, and I have faith in her vision. Sheila Duckworth, I don't know anything about her really, but judging by her commentary on the little segment on the CBS morning show, she's very passionate about soap operas and seemed to be a big part of pushing this to come to life on CBS. And we've seen a lot of promotion for this show, even during the playoff games on CBS. So I do think CBS is behind the show, which I think a lot of soap opera fans were worried. Will they give it a real chance? I mean, we were all shocked when we got the news that they would be creating a new soap opera after there's just been nothing but canceled soap operas for the past 15 years. So that was a big deal in and of itself. So I guess if they were going to greenlight this, we should have expected them to actually be behind it. And they do seem to be with the promotion for the show. They seem to have put money into the show too. Judging by the segment I saw, they have 27 sets. So for a soap opera these days, that's a big deal. Because if you watch the fallow CBS soap opera Young and the Restless these days, their sets were struggling there for a while. And Days, of course, has always been, they've been struggling with sets for well over a decade. General Hospital is the only one that seems to be able to have the budget these days to still have sets. But it seems like Beyond the Gates will have lots of sets to work with, which is a good thing. The other thing they did was try and add a recognizable soap opera actress to kind of lead the show in Tamara Tooney, who was on As the World Turns for a long time. She's also been in primetime a lot too. She had a stint on Law and Order, and she's a great actress. So I think that's going to be a big deal. Clifton Davis also a part of the cast, and then a lot of new faces to go along with the cast. Before I break down the three things that I think the show needs most in order to be a success and stick around like a classic soap opera would for at least a while, we do have to talk about a couple of my concerns. And the first concern is that Robert Guza Jr., at first it seemed he was just going to be a producer, which I thought was fine. He's been around soap operas forever at this point. He knows the business. But then it came out that at some point during the early development of the show, or the early episodes of the show, he became a co-head writer as well. And it's not the worst thing in the world. I think Guza has strengths as a writer. Going back to his stints on General Hospital, he obviously knows how to write big events that you're going to tune into because something big's going to go down. And that was usually also kind of a Jill Phelps thing. You know, she loved her sweeps, and Guza loved her sweeps. The sweeps months being May and November and February, where the shows have the most advertisers. They need to have better ratings, so they kind of, if timed right, do their biggest stories kind of climax in those months. And Guza would always have his big events during those months. But the downside of those big events was that somebody was always going to die. Somebody too important to the show at some points were killed off on General Hospital. And that is his weakness if he goes off the rails and starts killing off people that shouldn't be killed off. Now, he's a co-head writer here, but he's also a producer. So I could see him go off the rails. That could be a negative point from his writing. His other weakness is it's very plot driven, his writing. And I don't know if that's going to work. Like in modern television, I feel like that could work because everyone's attention span is shit. So maybe the show does need to be plot driven so that it can satisfy people's attention spans. But it would be nice to have a more classic presentation of character-driven soap opera that just hasn't been seen in a long time. The other negative behind the scenes is that Ron Carlivati is a part of the writing team. And if anybody's seen any of my soap opera videos over the years, his writing on Days of Our Lives is something I complain about all the time. Luckily, at this point, he is just a breakdown writer. He does not have a big role in the writing. He's not even a script writer at this point, I don't think, which wouldn't be the worst thing. So, at this point, it's not anything to panic about. But if he ever works his way up, I'm going to have to sit here. I'm going to have to complain because I hate his style of writing for soap operas where nothing gets taken seriously. And I just don't think that will work for this show. And I don't think that would work for CBS. But then I say that and I think of Bold and the Beautiful. And maybe that's not necessarily true. But let's get to the three things that I want to see from this soap opera to make it a success. Number one is easy, and it's the main thing that it has. It was one of my biggest complaints about General Hospital. 2 years ago being afraid of diversity. General Hospital was so afraid in the big years of the 2020s of some of the most ridiculous things. Clearly, this show's going to have diversity. Judging by the segment on the CBS morning show, there's diversity behind the scenes too, which I think is a big part of what modern soap operas need. So the number one thing I think this show will already have. But that leads me to number two. It needs to feel modern. Because none of the other soap operas, at least the American soap operas, I won't say the same for the British soap operas. I feel like the British soap operas, for the most part, have always tried to move with the times. But the American soap operas have been lagging behind the times for a very long time now. And at first looking at the character list, there is a lot of, well, the more prominent characters are older, or at least in their 30s or 40s. But, Tamara Tooney is older than that, and Clifton Davis is pushing 80. So that's could be a bad sign. Now, they obviously are going to have younger characters too, but I think this show needs to appeal to a younger audience. And in order to appeal to a younger audience, I think the younger characters have to be involved in modern situations. Because I sit and watch the General Hospital teen scene. I mean, I don't watch it anymore. But when I did watch the teen scene, they were a strong set of characters, but they wrote them like they were characters in their 30s. They were a little too conservative, and I don't think we need that from Beyond the Gates. I want the young characters to feel young and not be so conservative. Get involved in storylines that are modern struggles for modern younger people. And I don't necessarily know what that is because I'm getting old. I'm talking here as a millennial. But I think it needs to appeal to a younger audience than me. So in order to do that, the younger characters need to have actual stories that fit their age group and maybe move a little faster than other stories on the show, because we gotta feed the attention span of the younger folks that will watch the show. Maybe appeal to whatever apps are still around when the show is airing. Will TikTok still be around? Who knows? But if it is, then it needs to appeal to those people. And I think it can, but a lot of the cast is a little older, so that worries me. But yes, the third thing that I think this show needs is its own unique tone. Back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when soap operas were the most successful, each individual soap opera had its own feel. One Life to Live was the gritty soap opera with darker themes, with hookers and all of that. Days of Our Lives was the show for super couples and love stories. General Hospital at that point in the 80s was about people in the hospital. Action adventure in the 90s kind of turned more towards the mob. But each show had its own distinct characteristics. But at some point in the 90s, they all kind of started to blend together, and they all kind of eventually, by the 2000s, all kind of felt the same, all over the top and ridiculous. Nothing was distinct about them anymore. And Beyond the Gates needs to feel nothing like the four other soap operas that are still on the air, because they are all a struggling shit pile. So they can't, the show cannot feel like any of those four. It needs to feel like its own unique thing, and it needs to, I don't want it to be just camp like Days of Our Lives and Bold and the Beautiful, where right now there's a total lack of substance on those shows because nothing ever really matters anymore. Because on Days, people can die and come back to life all the time. On Bold and the Beautiful, everyone has dated everyone at this point, so it's ridiculous. So I don't know what that tone needs to be from Beyond the Gates, but I want it to be its own unique tone. It's going to be a hard balance for the show. Like, I don't know exactly what the show needs to be, but it needs to be a balance of modern themes, for one. That's very important, I think, while also appealing to a younger audience. Two, how does a soap opera balance that, the soap opera style of stretching out stories while also appealing to a modern, younger audience that has a short attention span? That's going to be difficult to pull off. But I do have faith because they have a budget, they have sets, they have what seems to be a good cast, what seems like great behind the scenes. So I'm very excited to see how this all turns out. I will be watching when this starts in February, and I will definitely be talking about it as long as it's good. I will talk about it a couple times a week when it starts airing. So yes, in the comments, I do want you all to let me know what you hope to see from this show when it starts airing. What things do you think this show needs? What do you think the tone of the show needs to be? For me, it seems like they're setting it up a little bit like, kind of like Young and the Restless and Bold and the Beautiful were set up, where you have this rich family who lives beyond the gates, but then you have these other characters of different, like, salaries, I guess you can say. I think we're going to have our characters that are poor, which is kind of how Bold and the Beautiful started for sure, to kind of go along with the rich Dupree family. All right, I've rambled on. That is all for now. We're about a month away until Beyond the Gates, so I don't know if I will talk about another soap opera until Beyond the Gates starts airing. I still try and check out Days, but until Ron is actually off the show and we have the new head writers come in here in a few months, I don't know if I can stomach it enough to actually watch it and get on here and talk about it.